Oh, Claire, I mean, I'm laughing, but I shouldn't, because it's just a scandal. I mean, so many people devoted so much of their lives to a Liberal win, and this is what happens. I mean, really. Now, Claire, people are blaming Angus Taylor, saying that, why should he now be leader when he's party to this stuff up? I mean, like that decision to not match or better beat Labor's miserly tax cuts and instead offer, that cut in petrol excise for 1 year. That seems to have been an impulse decision. What was his role in this whole disaster?
Well, what we're sort of learning now is that definitely it was his decision to immediately not want to support Labor's tax cuts. Sort of they launched this argument, the Liberals, that it was too little, too late. But then the delay in actually coming up with their own version, this temporary tax offset, essentially allowed Labor to cast the Liberals as being in favour of higher taxes. So in terms of that timing between saying you weren't going to support Labor and then coming up with your own plan, definitely Angus Taylor had a seat at that table. What's a bit more complicated that we've learning now, and I've had some sources tell me that essentially Angus Taylor was in favour of doing something more ambitious, more along the lines of indexing tax rates for income earners. But essentially it was actually Mr Dutton and the people around him that got cold feet there, and ultimately that idea was scrapped within sort of 48 hours of the Liberal launch, and the idea of a temporary offset came into the play. But, that's just another example where there clearly wasn't the staging and the thinking through of policy development. You kind of have to wonder what was going on for 3 years.
Claire, as you say, they had 3 years. And it's not a surprise this election was held now. There was only one more week it could have been held before that was it. I mean, to act like it came out of the blue, it's stunning. Good heavens, policy. But from what you just said there, who's supposed to blame? Is it Dutton himself? Was he a control freak that just simply got it wrong?
I don't think it's right to cast Dutton as a control freak exactly. It's pretty clear that he ran a very tight ship. He had a very loyal, small team around him that he implicitly trusted. And my kind of broader view is that maybe that narrow focused and that narrow inner circle, if the groupthink is off, then and you've got no other external kind of voices that you're listening to telling you that this is a problem, then it's a bit of a collective failure there. But ultimately, with Peter Dutton being the leader, and I mean, you have to say on Saturday night he did own the disastrous result. But I think what I've seen over the last 3 years is I've often heard shadow cabinet ministers say that, well, they feel like they get a fair hearing with Dutton, even if he then goes his own way. But my sort of thought there is, well, if he's continually going against you and going his own way, who is he listening to? It sounds like it's, his chief of staff, his comms director, some of those people in his inner circle in the party and in the parliament, and that maybe all of their read on what the situation was off. I mean, overall, I would say this was an election that they felt they could win by letting Labor lose, and unfortunately they didn't factor in that Labor is quite a good campaigning machine, and they essentially just ran them down.
Oh, look, what a ridiculous strategy, though, just relying on someone else to flop instead of grabbing it. Claire, look, what you just described in your office is so different to how Bob Hawke ran and did it really well. He had professional grumps in his office, Peter Barron and Jeff Walsh and people like that who were just, they didn't put up with any bull, and if they didn't like an idea, they'd say so. And he had a healthy enough ego to be able to cope with it, and it just worked brilliantly. Clare Armstrong, great story in the papers today. Thank you so much for your time.